we are creating our own rule book with holidays. We're creating our own rule book with the way we're going to parent when we have children. We're creating our own rule book with where we want to live. We're creating our own rule book with how we want to live.
Take a little bit of a reflective moment to that quote where it's not the world that's dictating the meaning that you're assigning in life. It's whether or not you choose to lean into self-assigning that meaning for yourself and for your relationship. Conscious couples, business partners, and singles committed to attracting their dream partner. Welcome to the Conscious Couples podcast, where we share our life, love story, and combined relationship expertise to help you create and consistently cultivate the most magnificent, intimate relationship possible.
Never again will you feel hopeless and alone in your intimate relationship challenges.
Having accumulated thousands of hours coaching conscious couples and individuals all over the world, as well as starting and growing a global business together, Alan and I are here to guide you in all things relationships.
Thank you again for tuning into the one place where it's not about you or me, it's about the we. Conscious couples and individuals from all over the world, welcome back to the Conscious Couples podcast. We have a very special episode for you today. I've been wanting to do this episode for a long time. I actually thought we had done it. The title, this is episode number 50, by the way, 50 podcasts in a row. Very cool. Creating your own rule book. So before we jump into the story, we want to say thank you to Next Level Podcast Solutions for producing this show and so many other shows. Thank you for all of the wonderful work that you do. We really appreciate you so much. Genuinely, you allow us to do what we do and to focus on that. So before we get started, love, what is your intention for today's episode?
My intention is for our listeners to feel as though you can create your own rule book. I think a lot of us end up getting birthed into a cycle that we don't really feel like we can break. And if there's anything that this podcast or our work here tonight that can do for our listeners, it would be to empower them to believe that it is possible and it's possible for you, and it will be worth it to create your own relationship rule book and live by that.
So when Emilia and I first got together, this is before the we was a thing. This is before the Conscious Couples podcast was a thing. And we would always have these deep conversations about how when we were growing up, we would see all of these relationships. We'd see these marriages. And I'll just speak for myself here. When I grew up, I used to be really scared of marriage. Yeah. I remember as a kid, in my teens, especially my early 20s, I was like so scared to get married. Because I would look around and I'd see all these married couples that just didn't seem very fulfilled. They didn't seem passionate. They didn't seem in love. I doubt they were making love. It just seemed, I remember I would see the husband say negative things about the wife, and I'd see the wife saying negative things about the husband. Oh, he's lazy or whatever. And it's like, why are you two even together? In my head, it's like, it just scared the hell out of me. And I vowed to never end up like that. I vowed to have a magnificent marriage. And when I first got with Emilia, we started talking about this. And I know that you went through a phase where you were petrified of marriage as well. And I went through a phase where I wasn't even considering marriage. I was like, I don't know if I'm ever going to get married.
Same.
And then I found out you went through that same phase. And now we both do want to get married in the future and all of those things. But the point of this episode is I brought this to Emilia. I said, listen, I don't want to do it the way anyone else has ever done it. My mom and my stepdad never got along well. They didn't have a magnificent relationship. Things were either really, really good when they were having fun or really not so good. And all their friends, same deal. And I don't want to do it that way. I don't want to do the stereotypical dad goes to work, mom stays home and does all the housework. I don't want to do the stereotypical anything. I want to create our own rule book. And you really loved that idea, and you lit up from the moment I said that. And I think that the other reason you lit up too, because in a weird way, and you've since expressed this, that's kind of a dream come true, to have someone who on their own accord had a dream about how to have an extraordinary relationship on their own accord. And that wasn't, you had that dream inside of you as well, but to have me bring that to you was probably really cool.
That was amazing.
Yeah.
Well, my experience, and I'm sure many of our listeners' experience, was somewhat of a similar thread as you and I, and maybe not. But for me, it was very much similar to you, babe. And you look around and you kind of see people as they age, and like it's almost as if the life gets pulled out of them. And when you look at that from a specific frame around the relationship, right? Like we grew up with all these Disney movies where they have all of this like love story and all that stuff, but then what it doesn't really include is all of that which happens like after the kids, after you have all of those like tangibles in the world that, you know, money can buy, or spending time together and making love can create, right? What happens after that? And that was where it really started to terrify me, because what happens after that is like a very gloomy, like not so encouraging state. And I never wanted to be or fall into that trap, if you will, of life, where because you followed down this path that was very much dogmatic and very much, you know, the concept of like, okay, it's like there's a running joke about it where it's like, okay, you grow up, you have your rebel phase, you end up with someone, you get married, you have kids, you go to work, and then you end up dying. Like it's like this whole cyclical phase about relationships. And I never was pulled towards that. I was always pulled to more of a journey, more of like the development of relationships. And yeah, it terrified me because I looked around and I was like, no, thanks. No, thanks. That's definitely not for me. I don't want to be miserable. I don't want to be making fun of my husband. Like I want to be so madly in love every single day. And while there are ups and downs, and that's so important to see, I want to make sure that I do everything within my power to really contribute to more ups than downs. And I think that, you know, at one point in my life, I really was like, I don't believe that that's even really remotely out there. Like, I don't really, like, yes, there's a burning part of me that wants to create that and co-create that, where there's a lot more ups than there are ever downs. And the downs, you can be really there together, right? And climb out of that. And so for me, I was like, I'm going to be alone forever. And I'm going to have my cats, or I'm going to have my gardens, or whatever it was. And I would rather be doing that than be in a miserable relationship where I was unseen, unheard, or following those dogmatic approaches to what stereotypical gender roles or marriage would ensue. And so I'm so grateful now, because in many ways, you and I have attracted one another as a result of our dreams and goals. And because we never let that flame get doused. You know, we never let that desire to create our own rule book get totally doused by everyone around us just because everyone else did that. Everyone else subscribed to the like typical approach to like a marriage and those life cycles. So I'm really grateful for that. But it definitely came with many different challenges that I don't think a lot of people are ready for. But there's a good side to all of this.
I want to try to share this. So I've never actually been able to articulate this publicly before, but I used to see these two scenarios in relationships, and I was studying people and relationships my entire life, particularly people and human behavior. And I would see these two relationships, and I couldn't find anyone that balanced the two well. And now I do believe that's what we're cultivating. I saw some couples were like, they didn't get along, and they like fought, and they were at each other and stuff like that, and they would butt heads constantly. Yeah. But they were really intimate, and they had a lot of passionate sex. Mm-hmm. And then I'd see these other couples that were like best friends, but you kind of knew they like didn't have sex. Mm-hmm. And I remember I used to think like, there's this one relationship that's a roller coaster, but they're very passionate sexually. Mm-hmm. And then there's this other relationship where they're best friends, but they don't have that passion. They don't have that fire ignited. Mm-hmm. And I remember thinking to myself, like, neither one of those is super appealing to me. Mm-hmm. I want both. I want to integrate them. Mm-hmm. And that's the drive to 5 that we're talking about here. So creating your own rule book is identifying what your core values are in your relationship, identifying what the house rules are in your relationship, identifying who wants to do what. So with Emilia and I, we wanted to talk about this. I'm kitchen man, and I've self-identified as kitchen man. So I'm doing dishes. I'm doing the cooking and the meal prep a lot of the time. And that's totally fine. There is no man is supposed to do X, woman is supposed to do Y. There is no holiday traditions that we just jump on the bandwagon and do it the way we're supposed to do it because our parents did that. We are creating our own rule book with holidays. We're creating our own rule book with the way we're going to parent when we have children. We're creating our own rule book with where we want to live. We're creating our own rule book with how we want to live. She's a business owner. I'm a business owner. Mm-hmm. I do housework. She does housework. It's a very proactive, let's co-create this rule book together so that we can design a life instead of falling into this normal graduate high school, go to college, have some fun, meet each other, get married, have kids, buy a house, get a dog, and honestly, maybe not in that order, but it's that same sort of common thing. Mm-hmm. And I'll just share this as well. And I don't want this to be negative, but I also want to be real. I remember in my early 20s, a lot of my friends were getting married. Mm. In my late 20s, a ton of my friends were getting married. And I remember saying, privately, this is unfortunate, but I'm also going to witness these people getting divorced. Because when you're in your early 20s, you don't know who you are.
Right.
You have no idea who you are. I know. I mean, think about how much you've evolved since you were 20 to 28. In those 8 years, it's unbelievable how much you've transformed, right? Grown and transformed.
Hi, I'm Derek, and I just wanted to talk about relationship talks with Alan and Emilia. If you're looking to get some help on working with your relationships, you should definitely give them a shot. They can help you identify certain patterns on things that maybe you didn't realize that you've done or that have happened. And if you want to be able to just start really kind of narrowing down the things that you can work on now that'll help you be more efficient for future relationships or even the one that you're in, they're definitely the ones to go see, as clearly they lead an example of what a great relationship should look like. And just in general, they're both incredibly intelligent and smart with just being able to pick out the things that maybe either you missed or that you knew but didn't really quite click yet. So you should definitely give them a shot because they're very, very helpful and efficient at what they do.
Mm-hmm. Now, there's no reason why you can't meet someone and grow with them. That's the point of this podcast. Mm-hmm. But the chances of that need to be based on proactivity, based on growth, based on intentionality. And so I have witnessed many of my old past friends get married and then get divorced. Mm-hmm. And again, it's anytime you fall into any, Mark Twain said this, anytime you see yourself on the side of the majority, it is time to pause and reflect. Mm-hmm. And that's really what this episode is. For those of you who are listening or watching, pause and reflect. Have you created your own rule book? Mm-hmm. Do you do what you want during the holidays? Have you decided with your partner what's most important to you two? Or are you in your cultural, generational cycles that you just kind of were born into? Mm-hmm. I often talk about how if I was born in Shanghai, I'd speak Chinese. Mm-hmm. If I was born in the US, I'd speak English, which I was. That's not because I was inherently supposed to speak English. It's because I was born into that culture. And so did I choose English or did English choose me? Did you choose your relationship or did your relationship choose you? And if you can flip the script and realize it is a choice and decide right now to build a magnificent relationship by creating a magnificent rule book, maybe you couldn't pick where you were born, but you can definitely pick who you're with and what rule book you create.
One of the most empowering things that I believe is worth transferring in this podcast is what I tell my clients all the time is you can choose the meaning. You might not be able to choose what had happened to you or where, like you had mentioned, where you were born, what culture, what gender, all those things, but you can choose the meaning of which it means to you. So for example, when you create your own rule book, you can create the meaning of what marriage means, what that means to you. You can create the meaning for what holidays mean for you. You can create the meaning of what to be in a relationship means to you. And I think that, to your point, love, not a lot of people have paused and reflected to see what is the meaning of a relationship. What is the meaning of getting married? What is the meaning? And I'm not just talking like just in general, but I think more even on like a macroscopic level where people really look at the bigger picture. What is the meaning in general to the globe? But then what does it mean to me? A lot of people don't feel empowered to really look at the meaning that they have deep within, and they don't pull that out. They let the larger global or cultural or gender or societal, economic, whatever it is, define the meaning. And then they assign that to themselves and say, like, this is just how the world works. And so if you're a listener of our show, we want to help and inspire you and empower you in this moment to where you can pause and you can take a little bit of a reflective moment to that quote where it's not the world that's dictating the meaning that you're assigning in life. It's whether or not you choose to lean into self-assigning that meaning for yourself and for your relationship. So I hope that every single listener can feel more empowered to assign a different meaning, i.e. create your own rule book in your relationship and what that looks like, the structure, the definition, the lack thereof. You know, I can't tell you how many people within even my family are so uncomfortable with the fact that like Alan and I live together, but yet I don't have a ring on my finger. He doesn't have a ring on his finger, or all of that dogmatic stuff, right? Don't let someone else's discomfort define your meaning within your relationship. Let it come from within you. And I think that that can be the most empowering thing that really doesn't let people tramp on that flame that all of us have.
Such a powerful episode, sweetheart. One more thing I want to share before we go here. I have a person that I coach, and they come from a culture where they said, Alan, in my culture, you have to get married and your family actually gets married and has kids young because the kids are supposed to take care of the parents.
Yeah.
And I told this person straight up, I said, listen, I know that that's the way that culture works. And thank you for sharing that. I didn't know that. And that's interesting.
Yeah.
But you don't have to do that. You can choose not to do that. And I know it's easier said than done because I mean, the amount of pressure and guilt and shame and,
right.
Oh, you're not going to take, that's how we do it here. And again, I'm keeping the culture anonymous because I don't want to, I want to keep it private. But there's, whether it's your relationship or it's the way you handle family or every relationship in your life, you can choose the way that you want to operate. And I guess the question would be, are you choosing? And so the last thing I'll say here, Emilia and I want to lead by example. Emilia and I decided that we want our relationship, the meaning of our relationship is growth.
Yeah.
It's growth and contribution. Everything we do and don't do is about growth and contribution, including this moment at 8:11 p.m. on a Saturday night after we both had a long, hard week. We are still here growing and contributing. Mm-hmm. And that is the meaning of our relationship. Now, everything synergizes around that. And of course, we have other quality of life things and different things that we do, but that's the core. That's the essence. That's the acorn that grows into the tree. And so for you, insert fortune cookie quote here. But for you in your relationship, what's the acorn? Are you an oak tree or a redwood? Or are you a birch tree? Right? You can choose. Did you just default to a birch tree? Did you even decide? Do you even know what the core of your relationship is? Emilia and I, from the very beginning, it was growth and contribution at its core. It still is. And that's what drives us every day. And if it wasn't that, we would have a really hard time staying on the same page and being in alignment consistently, right? And so if you're out there listening, hopefully this stirred something up for you that was really good. We got to jump. So we have a Relationship Talks virtual event on February 9th. And we do these events every single month, so please join us. The registration link will be in the show notes. It is on dialing in your love languages. So dialing in your love languages. We have 25 conscious love languages. We're going to go through each one piece by piece, help you understand exactly what it is, how it manifests. You're going to leave that event where you and your partner both have your top 3. Because most likely, if you're like most couples, and that's nothing, no shame in this, you don't know exactly what their exact love languages anymore because they've probably grown and evolved like we talked about in this episode. So join us. We hope to see you there, and we look forward to seeing you.
And if you and your partner or someone you know is having a hard time in their relationship and they're having trouble on getting on the same page, right? Again, no shame in that. All of us have struggled at one point or another in our relationship. And if you know that a safe space would benefit you and your partner or those people that you know, please make sure that you book on our calendar. Alan and I make sure that we create and we cultivate that safe space every single Saturday for our listeners and for our community members. For those people out there, which just so happens includes all of us, right? To have that safe space so that you can get back on the same page and you can get over that hard time that you're having with your partner. I can't tell you how many people that we've been able to see and help every single Saturday really help work through whatever challenges they're going through. Because number one, you're not alone. And number two, it is work outable. Like it is figure outable. And that's the most exciting thing when it comes to relationships. But it certainly does not feel that way when you feel like you're alone. So that link, if you ever need it, or if you're interested, that will be in the show notes as well. And we, again, look forward to creating that safe space for you and your partner, because I know that if Alan and I had that, when we were younger, things would look a little bit different.
Definitely. We love to meet our listeners. Thank you so much again for tuning in to the Conscious Couples podcast. As always, it is not about you or me. It's about the we. We'll talk to you next time.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of the Conscious Couples podcast. We love connecting with the Conscious Couples community, so please make sure you follow us on Instagram. I am at Evolve with Emilia, and Alan is a Lazaros 88.
Also, if you or your partner resonated with this episode, leave us a review at the link in the show notes, and please share this with someone you love and care about.
Until next time, remember, it's not about you or me. It's about
the we.